Today's show is called Improve Your Balance, Improve Your Life, and I am joined here with Jim Klopman. Jim is a lifelong innovator. He was looking for ways to maintain his own athletic performance as he got older, and in the process, he created something called the Slack Bow Balance Training System. We'll be talking about that today. It's a mind-body fitness program. It can help at any age. If you'd like to check it out while we're talking, you can learn more at his site, his products, his book, slackbow.com. Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. Looking forward to it. Appreciate it.
So why is balance so important for health? I don't think most people are thinking about muscles and they're thinking about mobility, but balance is often overlooked. Why is it important for our health?
I mean, I don't know. It affects all parts of our lives. It affects our brain performance, affects our sense of well-being, and, it keeps us alive. It's the one thing that really separates us from all other mammals. We're the only one that's designed to stand on 2 feet. And even then, we stand on 1 foot. And what we found that is we're all about just a quarter of a pound of pressure being in balance or out of balance. It's an incredibly powerful system. I think it takes up sort of more of our nervous system than any other system we have on our body or in our body. And it's just all encompassing. Everything we do is controlled by balance. Everything we do is limited by balance in certain ways.
And what is balance? Is it muscles? Is it this thing in our inner ear? Is it to help people understand, I guess
that's a great question, because I get that all the time, and I appreciate that. What we get is, I say to, classic fitness trainers, we do balance training. Oh yeah, the vestibular system. Oh yeah, the proprioceptive system. It's not that. It's composed of many, many systems. It is your inner ear vestibular system, but we've trained people and gotten them to do well without any vestibular system at all. It's your eyes. We see a lot of people training with their eyes closed, and that's just ridiculous. It's an incredible input system, and we believe that there's so much data that comes in through the eyes that we don't even know about in terms of keeping us balanced. That doesn't mean a blind person can't balance. They can, but they're reassigning those parts of their brains to other inputs that they get from their body. It's the bottom of your feet, 100,000 to 200,000 receptors on the bottom of your feet. It's brain tissue on the lower part of your spine that manipulates data and sends it back down to your lower extremities. That these signals don't even go to your brain. They go to brain tissue in other parts of the body. And oddly enough, and I think, what you do, you probably see it too, but the hands, I think, are an input system. And I don't know how, but I see everybody that goes to their maximal balance limits suddenly start moving their hands in ways that are common to each other. The tongue, we believe, is part of the system. So there's so much data coming in that I say balance system because that's what it is. I wish I had a better word for it, but it's a multiple of systems.
And when you say you think it's foolish for people to train with their eyes closed, I think people do that thinking that they'll train their vestibular system or their proprioception better. Do you not agree with that approach? Do you think there is validity in training with your eyes closed? What are your thoughts?
Not at all. You're just shutting off one of those several systems I just mentioned. If you're gonna train that way and you want to isolate one system, then you ought to isolate other systems as well. Can you desensitize your feet, so to speak, and train without that? Can you shut off your vestibular system? Well, you can to a certain extent, but you would have to be shutting off the other input systems. What we find is that with people I think the thinking is that when you close your eyes, you're shutting off visual cues. And when you live in the rectilinear world we live in now, there is an overuse of these cues. But we find that 90% of the data that goes in through your visual system goes direct to your subconscious mind. It's data that you don't even know you're receiving. And when we teach people how to use that system, the balance improves dramatically, hugely. So when we teach balance, it's just not a matter of, stand there, hold this. It's a matter of taking you to these limits. And then the visual system is such a huge component that it's probably 30% of what we do now in terms of teaching you how to use this data that comes into your system that you don't even know is coming into your system.
And the thing that I know a lot of listeners are thinking right now is there's a lot of people saying, quote unquote, I have bad balance, or, my friend has great balance, my spouse has great balance, I have terrible balance. Do you, in your experience working with lots of people over the years in your research, do you feel like this is something, is there an innate element? Is there a learned element? How much of it can be trained?
An awful lot of it can be trained. When we get, first of all, there's no correlation between somebody saying I have good balance or bad balance and whether they do or not. We have people who think they don't have good balance, they do. We have people who think they have great balance, and they don't. Now, when you get into the sort of chronic physical therapy end of the spectrum, we stay away from that. So if somebody really has a hard time standing up or walking or needs assistance walking, whether through a cane or a walker because of balance issues, those are not our clients per se. We believe they ought to spend time in the physical therapy space. So people, the bigger problem for us is it's an unseen loss, because we live in a world that, particularly if you live in urban areas, we live in a world that does not challenge our balance at all. So like anything in life, if you don't use it, you lose it. So we have created our own balance scale called the KBI, and 50 is average, 20 is you need a walker or a cane. And what happens is that the world is designed for people with walkers and canes. And if you live in that world, you get degraded down to that level. And then when you get a balance challenge that's higher than that, you fall and get injured. And, if you look, particularly in this country, if you look at the statistics, the injuries and deaths from falls are going up. They're not going down, despite the fact that if we have one little crack on the sidewalk that's up a quarter of an inch, a crew is out there trying to grind it down so you don't trip on it. It's remarkable to me that people really don't know that they're losing their balance. And I know I'm spending too long with this answer, but secondarily, we see it in athletic performance, that an athlete could have a 10% loss of his balance skills and not recognize it because he had such great balance to begin with. So he might go from 85 to 80, let's say, on our balance scale, and then not be performing as well in his sport and not know this because of a loss of balance. We reestablish the balance, and suddenly his performance goes back up.
And talk to me about this KBI balance scale. What does that stand for, and what sort of tools do you use to measure it? Because I know a lot of people listening, now that you've said, that some people who think they have good balance have bad balance and vice versa. I know a lot of people would like to do a quick test I don't know if that's possible, but what does that KBI stand for, and how do you test people?
Well, first of all, I didn't name it, someone else did. So it's called the Klopman Balance Index, and it goes like this: 0 to 100. So there are other balance indexes out there. There's the Romberg test. There's I think they call it the STAR balance test. There are different things you can do to test balance. But they're all static tests in many ways. Ours is a totally dynamic test. And the other part of it, those tests only go to, let's say, average balance. We want our scale to go all the way up to the highest level. So a Cirque du Soleil performer would be our 100. 95 would be the very best athletes in the world, whether it's somebody on a soccer pitch or on a basketball court. 85 is a pro athlete, 80 college, and on down the scale where you get to 50, which is what we would consider to be average. 20 would be the next turning point, so to speak. That's you need a walker or a cane to get around. 0 is all you can do is lie on your back. So we want to see people at 50, but we've had clients that'll come in and they'll go, well, gee, physical therapy said our balance is okay. I test them and I go, yeah, it's okay for existing day to day in the modern world, but you're a high level slope style skier. You're going to get hurt. You have to be at a 70 at least to be out there doing what you're doing. Now, how do you do it? I hate to say it's a pretty complicated, experience or learning curve to know how to do it. And we're right now trying to develop equipment and digitize it so that it's more automated. But it's based on movement patterns throughout the body and movement patterns when we test people for what we call their initial balance.
So give me an idea. I think people listening are probably familiar with like a functional flexibility test, which is an interesting measure. Are you putting people on unstable surfaces? Are you putting them on bongo boards? What kinds of things are you doing to
Yeah, we are putting them on unstable surfaces, and we're looking for movement patterns, and we're looking for visual cues. And we look for movement patterns throughout the whole body, upper body, and how their legs move when they're on these unstable surfaces. And we put them on a variety of unstable surfaces. So when you look at a functional movement screen or you look at somebody's flexibility, those are things we don't take into account at all. Matter of fact, I don't think there's anybody my age, at least in this country, that has balance as good as I do. And that's a challenge I put out. I'd love to have somebody come and compete against me, so to speak. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be able to do well on any of those other measures. I have very tight muscles. I have very little flexibility. I'm very fast for a man my age in terms of sprinting and running. I'm anaerobic. I'm totally an anaerobic athlete. Excuse me a minute. and I can do a lot of things that I don't think people my age can do, but if I were to look at all these other, or try to take all these other tests that are out there, I wouldn't do well on them.
And Jim, for somebody who comes in and let's say they score a 50 on your KBI test, and they
Right.
like you said, they're doing something where they should be at a 70. Like let's say they're doing heli-skiing
Right.
or whatever they're doing.
Right.
How realistic is it that somebody who's middle-aged can go from a 50 to a 70, and what would that training protocol look like?
It all depends on what the initial state of their physical ability is, but you don't have to be a fitness specimen to get to a 70. The protocol starts with a baseline test, and we believe all balance, human balance, is 1 foot. So there's almost no sport we play on 2 feet where the foot is equally distributed, where the weight's equally distributed between 2 feet. All balance is you're moving from 1 foot to the other, or you're on 1 foot or the other. So we spend a lot of time, or most of our time, doing 1 foot type of balance. So we would, can I get somebody who's age 50 up to a 70? Maybe. I can't say for sure. The loss of balance is a software problem. So I'm not teaching you a new skill. I'm not trying to reestablish, if I was trying to teach you how to hit a tennis ball for the first time, it may take several months. If I was to increase your strength by 10%, it would take several months. This happens very, very quickly, and it's like relighting a software system. And when people leave our facility, let's say after their first session at a level 40, they may come back at a level 50 because the body's already started going, I need to bring the system back on stream again. But getting people age 50 who are at a level 50 to a 70, I'd say I could probably do it with 90% of the people that come in.
And what does that involve? Is that slacklining? Is that isometric balancing? What kinds of things do you use?
We use the slackline. The slack bow is a device I developed, which is infinitely controllable. It's a slackline based device, but we don't walk on it. We have something on it, a patented thing called a slack plate. I think most people find this hard to believe, but rope is easier to stand on than a 1-inch line. A 1-inch line is easier to stand on than a 2-inch line, and a 3.5-inch plate is more difficult to stand on than a 2-inch line. So the plate adds a level of difficulty. We bring people in, the line's very tight to begin with, and then as they get better, we loosen the line up some. We do use a balance board, a bongo type board, but it's something that we design and use because we do a whole variety of different movements on it. People go to our social media. You don't see much on what we do, and we don't let clients videotape that because that whole world kind of, everybody loves to Instagram the cool things that they're doing. We don't, because we feel like a lot of it is stuff we developed ourselves. We have other movements. We find a lot of people come in, particularly those who spend a lot of time in the weight room, have lost the stabilizers in their upper body. They know how to use their big mobilizers, but it's the little stabilizers that make the system operate. We notice that in their movement patterns, and then we have movement patterns we take them through to activate those stabilizers. You just can't tell somebody, loosen up your shoulders. That doesn't work. In fact, the more you tell them to loosen up their shoulders, the tighter their shoulders get, so to speak. And everything we do when we train, there's no conscious movement at all. In fact, it's just amazing when you start balance training and you start using some of the right modalities, you just let the body discover what it needs to discover, and it finds its own place. So there's not, hold your leg this way, hold your knee this way. There's a little bit of that, but most of it's just doing. And then we think a big part of our science is, in our protocols, is knowing when you're ready to go to the next level. You'll never learn how to prove your balance till you take it to a limit. So if you watch a child learn how to walk, they'll walk, fall, get up, walk, fall, get up. So the limit for balance training is a fall. Well, we can't have that. So we know where the points are. Just short of these falls, we take people to those limits. We add more neural loading to that. Sometimes we'll talk to them, we'll hit them with foam bats, we'll throw things at them to sort of make the system operate at a higher level. And then when we see they've conquered that level, so to speak, we can take them to the next level without any risk, so to speak. We've had one fall no injury. So 2 falls, no injury. So it's pretty remarkable that we've gone through this long with no injuries at all.
And a lot of people listening have probably played around with a bongo board at some point, and one of the terrible things about a bongo board is when you eat it, you really eat it. You can land on your hip, you can really take a spill. Aside from the fact that if you live in an apartment building, your neighbors will all hate you. But I'm curious, what you think of that in terms of the risk factor, because a lot of what you're doing, of course, is trying to prevent slips and falls, and you're kind of getting on a device which is inherently going to come out from under you. And how does the slack line play into that?
That's an awesome question. So that's exactly what I was saying a minute ago. We get people on a bongo board sometimes within 30 minutes, but we have a progression that we take them through, and a progression that we keep sort of proprietary, but we take them through a balance challenge, movement pattern training, a balance challenge, movement pattern training. And when we see they're ready, we take them to the board and they get on it, no problem. I agree with you. One of the problems with the bongo board is that it has what we call, particularly if you get on it prematurely, a zero announcement of a fall. So you're on it, boom, you're on your ass. So we had a client come in one day and look at it and just said, oh no, keep me away from that. I had a glass of wine one day, got on it, broke my hip. I've never been the same since. Now with the slack bow, interestingly enough, at the levels we start people at, it has a really good announcement of the fall. And this is a term we've coined, and I don't know if there's a medical term or a scientific term for it. But what happens when you're on the slack bow, you're balancing, and you get the message about a second before you're going to lose your balance, that you've lost before you're going to fall, so to speak, that you've lost your balance, and people step off. So nobody's ever fallen off the slack bow. Now, we have in development a super difficult slack bow, and the first prototype that I built myself, I got on it and I was on my ass on the concrete in half a second. After I counted my bones to make sure nothing was broken, I started laughing and going, yeah, this is the limit of balance right here. But the point is, you would never take somebody at that level right away. In fact, we took that one device to a very talented national ski team, and they did not want to use it. They thought it was too difficult. But the point is, slack bow is a great announcement of the fall. We've had no falls. Well, yeah, I had one kid go down the bongo board, but he just wasn't paying attention. He was a great athlete. But we take people through a progression, and we get 70-year-olds on bongo boards, but they have to go through that progression first.
And for people listening who've never done any kind of balance training, what does a session look like? Like, is it 15 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? How much time do people need to commit? I think people have an idea about, what a gym workout looks like or a yoga class looks like. But if somebody wanted to have measurable, quantifiable improvement in their balance, from today, from a month from now, what kind of time commitment do they need to make? And, what are we looking at?
Well, there's a couple. We go about 45, 50 minutes. Every session begins with what we call the 12-minute routine on the slack bow. And the 12-minute routine is, basically a couple different positions and making sure we do equal time in each leg. And the reason we always start off with that is because every time you do this, when you take someone to the right kind of maximal balance limit, they use every small twitch muscle in their body. So we get super fit people come in and they get on it, and they'll say to us 30 seconds in, a minute in, I'm sweating. I haven't moved, but I'm sweating everywhere. And this is a great warm-up. And then we take them and progress them through a series of different movements. But we've done basic research. We did a simple study several years ago where we just had people do the 12-minute session like 10 times. And they had huge improvements in their performance. Every one of them improved their vertical leap by 10% without changing anything else in their training. And that was a minimum of 10%. Some went much higher than that. So if you want to do balance training, I say a minimum of 15 minutes, let's say 3 times a week. If you were to up that to half an hour, 45 minutes, you will regain a massive amount of your balance system. And if you utilize your balance system, that is, if you continue to use it in your sport, it's very durable. So it's not like you have to balance train all the time. Upscale the system, bring it back close to where is your maximal limit, put it to use in your sport, and it stays in place. But we have in the book listed several things that we think degrade your balance. And once you understand what those things are, and once you start to move differently day to day, I think the balance system can be very durable. But it's the type of thing that you train, get it up, and then sort of concentrate and observe it for the rest of your life, so to speak, and you'll keep it at a pretty high level.
And what do you think about footwear? This is something I've done a lot of research with, and I get different opinions. But, what do you think about shoes that people are wearing, how that's affecting or not their balance, and what do you suggest people wear for their activities?
Well, that's one of the four main components of, we think, is a balance loss amongst modern men, modern people, so to speak, is that, even if you're standing around these great running shoes, they all have some sort of lift in them, whether it's 6, 10, 12 millimeters, your heel is up off the ground higher than the front part of your foot, although it's kind of hidden within the design of the shoe. And, I ask this of everybody. Please tell me why we have heels on our shoes, or why we decide to lift our heels off the ground, whether it's street shoes or running shoes. Secondarily, when you take a running shoe, it may be rockered on the toe for purposes of running, but running shoes are mostly spent walking in or standing around in. So you take the most important component of the feet, where all the active muscles are, where all the great sensors are, the toes, the big toe for a reason, because they're supposed to be doing most of the work, and you have them lifted off the ground. It's just patently stupid. And then on top of that, you have 100,000, 200,000 sensors in the bottom of your feet. They're totally inoculated from the ground. You have nerve death at that point because the nerves in the bottom of the feet aren't being used. And I think this is one of the causes of some neuropathy as people get older. And of course, as they get older, their shoes get thicker and thicker and thicker. So I think it's a miserable thing that the Under Armours of the world are doing to the shoe and to people's feet. It's a terrible thing to do. Secondarily, we see, because of these shoes, people come in and they have a massive heel strike when they walk. And we teach people how to walk differently. We teach you how to walk like LeBron James or a great athlete. They don't do heel strikes when they walk. They walk like an athlete. So why, our point is, why go play baseball for 2 hours a day or become an athlete for 2 hours a day and then walk around like a spaz the rest of the time? We want you to be an athlete every time you're up on your feet. So I have a serious problem with shoes. We have some design concept for shoes. We think the Zero shoe company, XERO, has stayed true to, what a shoe should be. No heel lift, flat front part of the foot on the ground. There's some other shoe companies that are attempting to do it that don't get it. And I hate that this whole minimal shoe thing that was so, such a strong industry, so to speak, or focus 5 years ago, has disappeared because people were getting injured going out doing their basic heel strike in these, zero structure shoes, and these shoe companies got away from it, and they still call them minimal shoes, but God, if you look at them, they got tons of rubber underneath them. So the feet, I'll give you an example that we see with just about every new client that comes in. They'll come in with their thick running shoes, and they go, well, should we train with our shoes on? I always say, let's try the shoes. We take them to their first sort of maximal balance limit, and after about 2 minutes, they'll go, my feet are killing me. And it's because the feet have so many bones and muscles. Actually, 25% of the bones and muscles are in your feet, 25% of the bones and muscles are in your hands. So there's a massive amount of activity that your feet are supposed to be going through. But when they have those thick soles on, and I'm pushing these people's balance limit, their feet are working so hard to try to get through that rubber and get engaged that they get sore, they get tired. So when the client tells me the feet are sore, let's take off the shoes. They get back up. 10 seconds later, they go, my feet aren't sore anymore. So I'm with you. Whatever I can do to partner with you to get the whole shoe industry to get their shit together. It's miserable what they do to all of us. So.
And is the ultimate training device for you, is it a slack line? Is it an unstable surface? Is it a combination of things? Or do you feel like that slack line is really the key training tool?
It's a combination of surfaces. We do movement patterns through a series of uneven surfaces. We do use the Mongo type board. Slackline now, hats off to the slackliners. I think what they do is amazing, but we never walk on a slackline because there is no natural movement where you have one foot in front of the other like that. In fact, I was watching a shot yesterday of somebody on a slackline. Oh, I know. It was doing a stand-up paddleboard type of movement with their paddle. Well, when you have both feet on there, you basically have your weight back on your heels. No balance, no athletic movement anywhere, any point in time are you on your heels. So any balance training when you're back up on your heels with a locked out knee ever exists. Everything we do, we make sure that we're in more natural positions where we're engaging the toes and the front part of the feet. So for slacklining, people come and go, hey, can I walk on it? No, we don't walk. Because it's really not something that's a natural movement pattern to us.
For people listening, I know a lot of people are thinking, we have a lot of yoga people listening, and they want to develop balance on their hands. Do you work with hand balance training at all? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I see it. I think it's cool. It makes for a nice body, but, until we start playing golf on our hands, soccer on our hands, baseball on our hands, I really don't care much for it. It's
practical applications, not as much, sure.
It doesn't fit. So, like I said, it's neat. It, like I said, makes for a nice looking physique. It does some certain things for the shoulders, but until I get some sense of, I would need it out there in the real world, it doesn't present value to us.
So I think people listening understand the importance of this for, let's say, an alpine skier or something like that, where a fall could mean end of a career or worse.
Right.
But I think where people fail to make the connection is that in the later years of life, slips and falls are a huge cause of hospitalization and even death. And I just don't think people realize that, a hip fracture or hip break is just a massive thing. I wonder if you could speak to that for a moment.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's more than just and going back to sport, it's more than just alpine skiing. You can't swing any harder than what your balance system allows. You can't run and turn, cut any faster than your balance system allows. If you were exceed that, whether you had the strength or skill to do it, you'd fall. As soon as you upgrade your balance in all sports, you'll play better. You can hit a golf ball better, baseball better, you can throw harder, you can run faster, you can cut faster. So it's more than just preventing falls. It's allowing you to ultimately use as much of your athletic ability as possible. But now when it comes to falls, I'll give you statistics that are mind-blowing. One, these are from the NIH. It's the number one cause of accidental death and accidental injury for people over the age of 65. That in itself is pretty bad, but the fact of the matter is that this number has nearly doubled in the last 15 years. Now, deaths from all other diseases as a percent of the population have pretty much gone down. We're getting better at treating cancer, heart disease, etc. Deaths from falls nearly doubled. So how can it be? We have better fitness, we have better diets, we have better spaces that we operate in, yet the deaths from falls are going up. If you're over the age of 45 and you go to the emergency room, there's a 50% chance you're there for a fall. So for all people who go to the emergency room over the age of 45, 50% of them are there for a fall. Well, that's a hell of a burden on the emergency rooms. I mean, just think how much money we could save if we cut that number down. We talk a lot in this country now about concussions. We're always worried about Johnny on the baseball field or Sally on the soccer field getting these concussions. Well, the fact of the matter is the biggest cause of concussions in this country are falls. I mean, it's just crazy. It's the number one cause of industrial death. I mean, the numbers are astronomical, and these falls are always a surprise to people. I have clients that come in who are perfectly fit, and I just give them some of these numbers, and they go, yeah, I had that fall. And they all have the three same things that they say to me. They go, well, I think it was my shoes. Well, if it was the shoes, there'd be a whole group of lawyers out there suing the shoe companies because it's causing people to fall. That's not it. Number two, they always say, well, I wasn't paying attention. Well, who pays attention when they walk? Nobody does. And number three, they go, well, it was such a surprise because I think I had a problem with my balance. And that just means, oh, I didn't have a series of small falls and then I had the big fall. No, it just is always a surprise to everybody. So it's a huge problem, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. And like I said, we talked about it already. I think the shoe companies are, partly to blame for this. There's other causes for these losses, but yeah, it's a massive problem. And here, I don't know, it's not funny. It's just odd that number one cause of falls for people over the age of 65 are curbs. The curb. We see curbs every day. It's not like some surprise. It's a curb. So it's a crazy, crazy thing when you look deeply into it.
And for people listening who would like to check out your book, check out your products, tell us about both your book and your products so people can get an idea about what you have to offer.
Well, in the book we have, we don't go into a lot of science about the balance system. You can find that. No need for me just to repeat everything you can find on Google, so to speak. But we discuss, how important we think the balance system is, why it's good for your brain, why it's good for your body. But we also talk about the four main losses of balance. Then we go through, I think, the 6 major athletic movements. And we talk about how each of these movements can be improved or you can perform better because you have better balance. And then we go through some rudimentary evaluation of your balance system, and then some things you can do to improve your balance, and then we link you up to several videos online that you can continue education in terms of how to improve your balance.
Perfect. And so all of that is available at slackbow.com, and I think your book's available on Amazon too. Is that correct?
Right. Correct.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your work and what you're doing, and I hope you and I can stay in touch for the future. I'd love to hear more about your developments. I know this is a topic that doesn't get enough press in terms of people thinking about it, but it's a huge problem, and I think it's cool that there are new movement systems out there like slacklining where people are actually focusing 100% on balance. So I think there will be more and more research, and people like you are really leading the way. So thanks again for coming on the show, and let's stay in touch. If you've heard about our yoga trapeze teacher training course that we've been now hosting in 5 different countries and of course in our home base in Barcelona, but you've been unable to come join us, I'm excited to announce our first ever online version of the course. We're doing an academic version with at-home study, at-home practice, with an option to join us in the future if you'd like. But if you can't join us in the future, or if you'd just like to do the at-home version, we're really excited. We've got a great group of people already joined the course, and it kicks off very, very soon here. To learn about how the course works and for full information, go to yogateacherscollege.com, and on the top navigation you'll see trainings, and click on calendar and you'll see a link to the course there. It's our online yoga trapeze teacher training course. It's a 25-hour Yoga Alliance continuing education course. We're super excited. The course starts in just a couple of days, and so check it out. If you have questions, feel free to get in touch. I hope you can join us. We have a nutritional question from Peter this week, and Peter says, "Hey Lucas, I listened to your old episode about iron and the lucky iron fish. I ordered an iron fish for my house, but now I'm not sure if I should use it. As a 46-year-old man, I'm not sure if my iron levels are low or high, or if it's safe to supplement with iron. I've heard that too much iron can cause just as many problems as too little iron. What should I do?" So the quick answer, Peter, is go get your blood tested. That's the right thing to do. The cool thing about the lucky iron fish, and check out lucky iron fish if you just put it in Google or go to yogabody.com and type in lucky iron fish, and the show will come up. It's a cool show and a cool interview. It's a cool company. They sell these iron fish that basically lasts you forever. You stick it in your, I think it's $20 or something. It lasts forever. You stick it in your kitchen, and you can throw it in a pot of soup, for example, and it'll make your soup iron rich. And for everyone you buy, they give away a fish to the developing and emerging economies of the world. Last time I talked to them, I believe they were working in Cambodia specifically. I think they've expanded to a bunch of other countries. So first and foremost, iron deficiency is a huge problem. Billions of people, like 2 billion people, something like that. So it's a big problem. People often say supplements don't work. Well, the World Health Organization would take issue with that. They clearly work. If you're deficient in iron and you take iron supplements, it can radically change your life and the life of all of your descendants. Same thing with vitamin A. You're deficient in vitamin A, maybe you'll go blind, maybe take a couple of pills, and maybe you won't go blind. So supplements, not only do they work, they're life-saving, and in many cases they're absolutely transformative for communities and generations of people. And things like iron can be that transformative. And in areas where things are so iron poor, where people are living almost exclusively off of rice, for example, it can really be a game changer. That said, in the developed world as well, even in wealthy countries, anemia is pretty common, and this happens because people have nutritional imbalances. So while they might be eating plenty of iron-rich foods, whether it's from things like beans and spinach or red meat or whatever it is, they might not have the cofactors necessary to actually absorb that iron. B vitamins are a common one that are lacking. And so they're eating iron, but it's not going in. Probably everyone listening knows someone who's been anemic at one point or another. It's really common. So what do you do when you're anemic? What do you do? A lot of times when women get pregnant, they get their blood levels tested, and this is very common during pregnancy. People have low levels of iron. It's risky. What should you do? Well, people will tell you anyone who's been on iron supplements hates them. In fact, this is why if you go to the vitamins section in your local store, you will see lots of iron-free multivitamins, because people hate iron. It feels like you just swallowed a bunch of gravel, and it lasts for like 6 or 8 hours. Most people cannot handle supplementing iron. There's a couple of companies that have tried little tricks. Liquid-based iron are some of the more popular prenatal iron supplements. This Lucky Iron Fish is one that I really like. The only thing I can't speak to is the efficacy and the dosing and the safety. It seems pretty variable, meaning did I add lemon? Did I cook it long enough? I'm not really sure. So I think your question is a valid one, Peter. I also have one of these Lucky Iron Fish, and I use it irregularly. I've never had a problem with iron levels or anemia, and I do get my blood tested regularly. They're always in the safe and healthy range, lucky me. And I still like to use this Lucky Iron Fish once in a while. I'll throw it in a pot of soup just to make it iron rich. I'm not eating liver or anything like that, so I think once in a while to give myself a little hit of iron is probably a good idea. What do people do? So when they get anemic, people will be given supplements by their doctor or recommended a multivitamin. And sometimes people will do things like eat really iron-rich foods like chicken liver, for example. Kind of disgusting, but it's a common one that people will go to. In terms of you and what you should do for your family, the short answer is get tested. Like vitamin D, overdoing iron can be a really bad thing. Now on the vitamin D side, almost everybody's deficient. So I've yet to meet somebody who overdid it with supplementing. It's usually the other way around. But iron, you can absolutely overdo it, and you will feel it. You'll have black stools and a lead belly, and you will not feel good. So, Peter, I've talked a lot, but I don't know if I've really given you an answer. I think iron is obviously a really crucial nutrient, but it's kind of one that you need to test. So I'd encourage you and the rest of your family to get some blood work and then decide accordingly. And also think about the way that you're eating. I eat just plants, and so for me, I don't have a lot of great sources of iron. There's plenty of plant-based sources, but they aren't as absorbable as, say, liver or red meat or something like this. So for me, adding a little bit of iron now and then makes quite a bit of sense. For a premenopausal woman, also there's an argument to be made that eating more iron-rich foods and or supplementing with something natural-ish like a Lucky Iron Fish could be a good way to go. I would encourage you to follow the company. Lucky Iron Fish, it's a cool company. They put out quite a bit of research, and you can learn a lot from that show we did, and also from the work that they're doing. They're quite active online. I really like what they're doing. Hope that's helpful, Peter. We have a great question from listener Tanya this week. Tanya says, I have a question on a podcast with Kelly Levesque. Because of this episode, I ordered a blood glucose monitor. I am a fruit addict, so I was interested in Kelly's Fab 4 smoothies. The trouble is she includes fruit. Can you please do a podcast on fruit and the way you would address carbs? This is an interesting question. Fruit is a challenging thing, simply because the fruit that we have now is nothing like the fruit you would find in nature. If you've ever had a wild banana or even just a non-extremely hybridized version of a banana, bananas are totally inedible. They're disgusting, they're starchy, they're loaded with black seeds. It's like rocks. You might be able to eat the equivalent of 10% of a banana in terms of actual pulp, just because it's so loaded with seeds and disgusting. And what we've done is we've tweaked them and we've turned them into this super sugar-rich, extremely dense food, which is awesome when you're trying not to starve. But starvation is a small and diminishing problem every day. Most of the developed world right now is struggling with the opposite problem, which is we're eating too much, right? And so all of these things that made a ton of sense 100 years ago, dwarf wheat and hyperproductive corn and super, super sugary fruits, and they taste great and they look great on the shelf, and you got a lot more nutrition packed into one little place, or a lot more calories at least packed into one place. That made a lot of sense. Now it's a huge problem, because if you sit down and you eat 5 bananas, which is really easy to do, or you blend up 3 bananas into a smoothie, which is super easy to do. You might go to Jamba Juice and get like a smoothie that has 200 grams of various forms of sugars. It's a huge, huge problem in terms of your metabolic health. So nothing wrong with sugars, nothing wrong with fruit. It's just they've been tweaked, and so you have to pay attention. As a general rule, Tanya, and for other listeners, I usually go by Dr. Mercola's recommendation of less than 25 grams of fructose per day. Fructose is the type of sugar that you'll find in fruits. It's also in vegetables. So there's fructose in tomatoes, and tomatoes technically are a fruit as well. It gets a little confusing. Generally, we just think about sweet fruits and vegetables, and then savory ones. Technically, an avocado and a cucumber are fruits as well, but that just sounds like semantics. Essentially, the fructose is probably a better way to designate fruit, is the high fructose content. Some of the higher fructose content are usually the more common foods. So if you look at bananas and apples and pears are really high, and watermelon and these kinds of things, apples, oranges, peaches, pears, these kinds of things, the most common fruits are often the ones with the highest levels of fructose. And as a general rule, if you just think of a couple pieces of fruit a day, usually that gets you right about maxed out at that 25 grams of fructose per day. Here's the deal with fructose. It's a funny sugar. It doesn't hit your blood sugar the way that other starches and things will. So it's a kind of a slower sugar. So for many years, it was even recommended that diabetics swap out table sugar for different forms of fructose, even just straight powdered fructose or high fructose corn syrup and things like this. Now, nobody really believes that anymore because fructose can actually be super detrimental. I don't know if it's accurate to say worse, but certainly just as problematic. Fructose is a funny sugar in that even though it doesn't hit your blood sugar super fast, it can mess up your triglyceride levels and it can get turned into stored body fat really quickly. It's extremely lipogenic, and the body fat tends to be around your midsection, so that visceral fat around your belly and your vital organs. So it's a huge, huge problem. If you've ever gone on any kind of fruit fast, you might have noticed this. If you've ever known any fruitarians or people experimenting with fruit fasting, they'll often get very thin but squishy. And by squishy, I mean high body fat percentage. So they might be underweight but over fat. And so underweight, but maybe 20+% body fat for a man and 30+% for a woman. It's not uncommon. And so even though they're thin, they're underfed but over fat, and this can be a really big problem. When you're looking at smoothies and stuff, when you're looking at fruit in general, nothing wrong with fruit and nothing wrong with fructose. We just want to keep it within a range that we can manage, which is difficult in our modern food system. So a couple of pieces of fruit per day. When you're working on smoothies, my suggestion is use as little as you can manage and still make it palatable. So, maybe instead of putting a full apple in a smoothie, you put a quarter of an apple. Instead of using a full pear, you use half a pear, whatever it is to make it palatable, and just make sure that you're not trying to live off of fruit, because that can get you into metabolic trouble pretty quickly. There are exceptions to this. You'll find some endurance athletes and some people who just have great genetics. They can handle a ton of fructose. You'll find them on YouTube and other places. Pretty impressive. They're doing great. They're definitely the exception, not the rule. I worked, I taught raw food, and I worked in the raw food scene for a number of years. And these people on fruit-only diets, they don't do well. It's just they just don't do well. I mean, we could argue about it, but there's really no point. It just doesn't last. They might have a 6-month honeymoon or something like that, but it doesn't work out long term. And the metabolic disruption is a huge, huge part of that. Hope that's helpful. Thanks for your question, Tanya.
This week's iTunes review is by Someone Else 85 from the UK. Someone Else 85 says, I came across this podcast through a friend and a training I did last year. Every time I listen, the topic is perfect for that moment in my day, week, or month, sometimes without me even realizing that I needed it. It's so clear, honest, and true. Someone Else 85, you have won the Yoga Trapeze. Email us at podcast@yogabody.com and we'll get that out to you.
If you're a regular Yoga Talk Show listener, you'll definitely want to get on my email list. Go to yogabody.com/sign me up. When you enter your email address there, we always have free giveaways every month, yoga straps, water bottles, discounts in our shop, and all kinds of other things. When you sign up at yogabody.com/sign me up, I'll send you just one email a week with updates about the show, special offers, new courses, and valuable information that I think you'll find useful. So go to yogabody.com/sign me up to claim your free prize now.